When I think back on all the fears when I was pregnant, all of them dismissed except for one. The only test the state mandated was genetic. Looking for that extra chromosome.
Hello and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast. I'm Steven Socks.
And I'm Lori Socks.
Today we're going to talk about the importance of words.
Words. Right. I remember, I think I was in college and I had to write a paper, and a professor of mine who didn't like my word choices or didn't think they were strong enough said a quote from Mark Twain, which was, "The difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug," or something like that. That's how the quote goes. And that really stuck with me because just very directly points to the power of our word choice. How are we communicating things? And that's really stuck with me. That's stuck with me. It doesn't always apply to things I say, but it's always stuck with me as a reminder that my word choice is powerful. My word choice can be a lightning bug, which is pretty squashable, or lightning, which is dynamic and powerful.
Man, it is not more evident than in an IEP.
Yeah. Over the years, what I've learned is that you really have to read every word that's on the paper, and also the words that are spoken, and do those match up, and how are they communicated, right? Because we can talk about, let's say, just an accommodation of Liam uses a calculator, accommodation, calculator. That's how it should be written. Accommodation, calculator. Because the truth is, a calculator, math goes across science, right?
Oh, he can use a calculator in a lot of different subjects.
Right. There's math all around us.
He should just have that at his fingertips to use.
Right. And recently we found that it was rewritten, a calculator to be used when appropriate.
Red flag. When appropriate.
When appropriate is...
It sounds actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to get that, to have that be told to you in an IEP and you go, okay,
when
it's at the end of the
that
sentence.
Makes
You're
sense.
like, oh, he gets a calculator when appropriate.
That makes sense to me. But the problem about when appropriate, that doesn't really point to Liam's need. It points to an outside party deciding when a calculator is appropriate.
Yeah, it's a judgment call.
It's a total judgment call. And when that happens, that means you could get either a teacher or a BII or a resource person that feels that our son needs to just know multiplication tables. So they're not going to allow him the calculator because it's not appropriate, because they feel it's not appropriate.
Now, calculator, maybe we go back just a second to just talk about calculator, how great that is. But also, it's not to discard the fact that learning times tables is maybe a step of math in elementary school. But once you're past that, and it can be an aid to that as well, it's the fact that it could cause a lot of time waste if you're just having to multiply manually when you're getting into like larger equations and stuff like that.
Two-step problems.
Yeah, this is just a way to we've got that. Let's just bypass it so we can get onto newer math. We can get onto newer math, newer science, and not have to deal with this time restraint and just go forward.
Because if your student doesn't have the foundational skill of multiplication and learning the multiplication charts, that's really not on them. That's a reflection that the foundational skill was never taught to them. Mm-hmm. And that happens, I think, third grade. Around third grade, we start to do, like, they have to memorize those multiplication charts. And just so
and division and stuff. And this way, we can kind of like get forward from there.
Right. But even you can use a calculator. You can use a calculator to straight divide, or you can use a calculator to teach division. It's just the multiplication. Mm-hmm. It's really that multiplication, but it is a shortcut, and it's not a shortcut. It's an accommodation. And that accommodation is to be used. And it was put this time as appropriate. And we were like, that is
Not appropriate.
That is not appropriate. That's inappropriate because the calculator is simply an accommodation at Liam's fingertips, just like sentence starters, a resource binder filled with things that he can reference across the board for math, for science, for biology. I mean, for math, that he can reference across the board in all of his subjects. So we asked that the when appropriate be taken out. And
there was a little hesitation there.
There was a hesitation. We definitely hit a wall because they came back with their, when we're doing a math test and you are being tested on this two-step problem, and I said, but it doesn't matter. Like honestly, if I'm doing a two-step problem, I'm getting my calculator out. And the truth of the matter is, for a lot of math, they're using a calculator in the classroom.
As you advance too, yeah.
Right. And it's not a modification. That's a word, modification. That was thrown out, modification. It's an accommodation because it's an accommodation that allows Liam to access what's in the classroom right now. Mm-hmm. So the point of the accommodation, and this is what I always bring it back to in my IEP, the point of the meetings and of the IEP is for our son to access his curriculum. So that accommodation is there. I want to do a quick little note to accommodation versus modification. Sometimes, so being on curriculum is not as important as it was a few years ago because now you can still obtain a diploma being on an alternate curriculum. There is now a path to the diploma on an alternate curriculum, which is great. But Liam's on curriculum. And if you want your student to stay on curriculum, then, you have that right. You have that. I think it's case by case. We always said that if we got to a point where we knew our son couldn't do the work, that then we would have the conversation to change his curriculum path, right? So modification is when they change the lesson. So that would be an alternate curriculum. They're changing the lesson for accessibility. And sometimes that needs to happen, but it is not the same as an accommodation. And it used to be really what was used to try to pull him off curriculum, right? Well, we're modifying that. So when someone is trying to tell you that that is a modification, ask them to define how that is a modification. And let's just say it's a modification to his math because we are going to just give him, instead of a two-step problem, let's just say this, we're going to bypass the multiplication and modify it so he only has to do this part of the problem. Then you can say, well, let's not modify it. Let's accommodate it. And then you find your way. So another
word very important.
Modification was really like they came in hot in elementary school trying to always say that Liam's work was being modified, and it wasn't. But you just have to know what the word means. It's the same as when they come to me and say Liam's failing science, and I say, how could that be? Because with his accommodations in place, he should be accessing, and actually science is a place that he thrives, just like math, because of the accommodations. The words Liam is failing, I bring that to how was he failed, right? Because Liam doesn't fail. He doesn't fail. He does the work, right? And he doesn't really fail. Like maybe it's a C, maybe it's even a D. We don't really focus on grades. We just want him learning. But but the truth is, if Liam gets anything under a C, that's because he's been failed.
Mm-hmm. There hasn't been the right accommodations, like front loading, helping him stay on task, all these things. So with those accommodations, if you lined up in your IEP, then your child accesses the curriculum. Right.
So that is a place where we talk about words, is that Liam hasn't failed. He has been failed. And then we discuss that as a collaboration. And we've been on this journey for 15 years. And there are a lot of emotions and a lot of different places that we've been. They've really never been dictated by our son that stands before us, but there's been, having to fight for his education, having to fight for his place in society, having to tolerate words and judgments and misperceptions of our son. We've gone through the gamut of emotions and approaches, and we're here now at a place that just stands in disability pride, having gone through the anger of fighting for his rights or just the injustices that have happened. So, we're well into it. And it's really important for us because we've seen coming through how the toll of some of the words that came at us, the challenges and the fights that came at us, really, they took a toll on our emotional and mental well-being. They can really just beat you down. And so now we're here because I want to be very aware that sometimes if I put myself, at the beginning of this educational journey, I might be listening to this going, how come you're not mad? Like, I'm so mad. Or, like what the feelings that I would have had, the feelings that I had, in kindergarten when they wanted to take him off curriculum, or the feeling that I had when he was denied his place in the classroom. Or in education. So I do really want to make sure that it's understood that we are aware of the journey and the feelings that can be born from this journey. But one thing that's always been very clear to us is, for the most part, those feelings come from exteriors and not from the beautiful human who, we call our son. So just and that is words. Like, I think about the power of words when Liam was first diagnosed, when he was born, being confronted with life expectancy and different medical challenges that might happen. Like, those really took their toll. And at the time, if I would have been me now and someone came to me and said, your son has a life expectancy of whatever years it is, I would have said that nobody can tell me my son's life expectancy. But there's something about the words that are planted and we begin to tolerate and then cultivate within ourselves, right? There's something about how the diagnosis is given to us, the words that are selected, the words that we allow people to speak over us that we would never in a million years tolerate. Society wouldn't tolerate those words. And we have power because we have our own words. And we have our own words. And one word that I love is stop, or that's enough, or show me your proof, or what do you expect to evoke from me in this moment? Or where are you getting your knowledge? Where is this coming from? Show me your facts. And I have actually in the past, in later IEP said, show me your facts that stand behind your actions. And I don't think I was ever given any facts. It's just propagated information that's usually allowed to, be left on the table.
Yeah, it's like very generic things like best practices.
Oh my goodness.
Or the best of our ability.
Yep.
Stuff like that, where it's like, well, first of all, best practices, it has to be defined what that is. It can't just be like, I can just use that as an umbrella statement to say, we've done research and we have the standard thing that is tested and bonded over time that this is the right way to do it. And I'm just going to say now, well, best practices tells us this is how we have to do it. Every child's unique. Every child's education can be unique. And there's not a best practices umbrella that when it comes to specifics. And also when you hear best of our ability, like we're going to implement this accommodation to the best of our ability.
That is not illegal.
Educators can't be left off the hook like that. That can't be, well, we just didn't have time. We didn't have the right amount of staff. We didn't have time to do it. We didn't have a resource at that time. And no, that cannot be written. That can happen. That cannot be written in an IEP to be like, oh yeah, no, you just have a blanket, like, get out of jail free card type of vibe. You have to, like, that has to be, when that happens, and it's going to happen, then you talk about it and communicate at the moment. Why didn't you do it? Because we didn't have this and that. Okay, well, we figured it out. Not in the IEP to be expected no matter where your student goes to whatever school and whatever grade.
So first, to hit on best practices. Best practices, to my understanding, is let's just say something in the IEP, like Liam has an accommodation of dictate to scribe, or Liam has the access to notes front loaded on a hard copy. So best practices, well, maybe the hard copy isn't what they have, but best practices would be something that is equal and reaches the same goal. It's like, this isn't what we have here, but best practices, this is how we do it. And if the goal and if the end result is the same, that's best practices, because they've got you to the same place, but they take this route. And I'm always open to new routes, because this journey is not perfect, and I think there needs to be a lot of new routes. I think there has to be a lot of new ways. But best practices isn't we just didn't do it. That's not best practices. Best practices isn't, well, RBII doesn't do that. That's not best practices, because Liam's not accessing his curriculum, and the main goal, the end goal here is for our student to access his curriculum and receive an equal education. So that's best practices. And when you say best of our ability, that's not how it's written in the IEP. The IEP is a very specific legal binding document. And so the words that go in there, no one would ever say to the best of our ability, because that's like, what's the best of my ability, right? Like, what is that? That's
again, that's undefinable.
But it's part of the conversation and the words that get thrown around in an IEP. So those words can be very powerful. They also can demonstrate and show us where people are coming from. Now, as I was saying before on my tangent about how we've gotten to this place, what I've learned is people can be very defensive if they don't know what they're doing. People can, I do believe that everybody is doing their best. Even the people who have completely failed our child, that is the best they had. Where whatever their best was coming from, or whatever their intention of their best was, that was what they had to give. I can't judge it, and I can't get caught up in how wrong it is for our son's journey. I have, but it never really got me anyplace. So when I'm in a conversation and we're discussing the IEP, I listen. I don't know if I was always a good listener. I was so damn defensive. I was so defensive, just fighting for my son's right to an education, and just right there, because I knew where the failures were going to come. I knew where the words, I knew we were going to have to fight for speech. I knew they were going to try to limit minutes. I knew I knew where it was coming from. So I was so defensive. I think it made me a bad listener for a long time. And in listening, one, that takes the level down. And also people know they're being listened to, right? And it gives people space to change. And it gives space for what we're really there for to blossom. Because I can just keep bringing it back to, okay, that's the best of your ability. And we understand that. But what's the best of our son's ability? And it's not about, that's not being honored. Like, if we focus on the best of the adult, and I bring it back to the adults in the room, it's not about us. And that's a reminder to me. It's a reminder to everyone that it's not about our egos. It's not about what we think we can do. It's not about the things that we don't have or we don't know. It's about, okay, well, if you don't have that, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get there? And that is a new sentence that came. That is a new sentence to my dialogue over the last couple of years is, how are we going to get there? Because the end result, the reason why we're here is for Liam. It's about writing this document in a way that it upholds Liam's right to an equal education and gives him the accommodations that allow him to access that. And access would be, if you have a lock, you need the key, right? But if that key is in a bag that you can't open, it doesn't matter that you have that key. So we can say Liam has access to hard copies, but if nobody's printing them for him and they're not in his notebook for him to then highlight, which is another accommodation, then he doesn't really have that access. And so that's part of the conversation. And that's why having the words in place, not as needed, if available, when appropriate, none of those need to be in there. And if they want them in there, I ask why. Like, why do we want to give him something else? And I'll tell you what happened this year. This year we encountered an assistant that, because Liam had such a beautiful BII for the last 3 years that just supported him, I didn't think to have that role defined in the IEP. I did not think to define what that role was, because I thought I knew, right? We've seen it done correctly. And this year we encountered someone who said, not my job. That's not my job. That's not what I do. And it became a distraction. And we have to be careful of distractions, because we have to remember what we're focused on and remember what we're trying to accomplish. Remember what the end goal is. The end goal is Liam accessing his curriculum and receiving his fundamental right to an equal education. That is the focus. So there was this distraction, and it was very frustrating, and it caused Liam a lot of extra work. But we took that very frustrating incident, and we brought it into the IEP to explain to them why these words are so important, that they actually reflect the supports that are going to be in place for our son. Because what I like to say is, if everybody here in this meeting won the lottery today and didn't show up tomorrow, how would this document be interpreted? What would it define? What would Liam's day look like if we just went from what you're writing down? So that document has to be airtight. So
it has to surpass the adults in the room, right?
It has to surpass the adults in the room. Liam's objective is accessing a high school education, graduating with his peers, so he can go on. And if he wants to go to college, he can go to college, right? That's Liam. That's big. That's big for any freshman in high school. So the adult, yeah, you're right. It has to, that's perfectly said. It has to surpass the adults in the room and their vision, or what they see,
or if they're even there in the next step of his education.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think when we said that, they started to understand, because there was a lot of conversations, and I've always advocated for, please parents, please caregivers, no side conversations. We got burnt so bad in elementary school from people on the side going, yeah, we'll do this. And that document is the only thing that matters, how it's written. It's not like a side conversation. And you know what? Someone might do what they say, but then it makes education a favor. It makes accommodations an option.
Yeah, it makes it like they've gone above and beyond.
And they haven't. It is just a legal binding document with the accommodations and supports that allow your student to access the curriculum, period. And so we do have a lot of conversations where maybe the school isn't able to do a certain thing because they do their schedule this way and they've made these changes. But in the classroom, they've made the adjustments and are supporting the student, but that reads as a favor. That reads as an option. So it has to be written. If you're failing right here to do what you're supposed to do, then right next to it, write how you're then bridging that gap and what you're doing. So if tomorrow you're not here, someone else will step in and do that work. And what was really great, and it's really how I feel that life will work, is that we were receiving a lot of pushback. And I brought it back to the fact that we experienced Not My Job already once this year, and how Not My Job caused a lot of challenges for Liam, and how when someone was saying Not My Job, people started to search the document, the IEP, for where it was someone's job, and it wasn't written in the IEP. And that is why there have been challenges for Liam receiving that support. So that being said, it proved the point. It really proved the point.
Put it in writing.
Put it in writing.
In the document.
And what I've learned is if it doesn't feel right, and if it doesn't say exactly how you want it to say, like, how do you say when the teacher comes up to you, what are Liam's accommodations? I say Liam has the accommodation of a calculator. Liam has the accommodation of a resource binder that has all of the equations and reference notes he needs to perform the math. I don't even know math. I can't even tell you. I have to actually reference the verbiage because I don't know math. Like I am a parent. I am not the professional, although I've had to teach my son at home. And I will say that in IEP, look, I am not the professional here. So the words have to be to where I can just read it and communicate to the professional what they need to do in a classroom. And that's why that document and the word choices are very important. And if you don't have an advocate and you don't have a lawyer sitting next to you, go line by line. Another set of words that we get at the very beginning of every IEP is let's be mindful of everyone's time.
We hear that. I mean, in specifics, the last time we were in our IEP, we were discussing some issues that had to do with school and also connected with the IEP. And I think sometimes people don't want to be, I don't know if they think they're being reprimanded or told what to do. It's just the observation that we're bringing to light. And after a pause, the IEP team said, to be mindful of everyone's time, let's move forward to our next business. And it's like, well, that's disregarding what was said beforehand. This is everyone's time. And my point was, in this IEP meeting, we're the only two that aren't getting paid for our time. Like, being mindful of someone's time, right away, their time has a value. So don't let someone squash what you're trying to say in this time of whatever you have, an hour or two for this IEP or whatever has been designated. Don't let someone try to devalue what you're saying because of a time restraint.
Well, the time restraint, there's no written time in an IEP. And we've experienced that because we've had educators keep reconvening up to, I think our longest IEP was within the 20 hour, like 20.
Yeah, it was crazy. Pretty crazy. Multiple days.
Multiple full days us sitting. And they weren't concerned with time. I feel like that's one of those statements to me that is like, okay, now we're going to take more time because I'm going to stop the conversation. First of all, when you say that, this is how it reads to me. And I don't mention that they get paid and we don't, but I do say,
that was my...
but that's a private conversation. And that's really something that you don't think about when you're in the IUP, right? Like I've never thought about that. I think Stephen just brought it up.
Let's reconvene next week. You're like, okay, great. I got to take off work. I got to get this handled. I can't do this. Like whatever your daily schedule is.
I got to clear my schedule. I can't, like I have to schedule my personal time. That's my personal time.
It's not happening in the evening after school. For a reason. It's happening during their occupational
I don't think
day.
You can make teachers do an IEP.
No, they need to be paid during it. It's not the issue, but the issue is that, look, we're all taking our time here, but this time is for Liam, for our student. This is Liam's time to be wasted or not.
Right. And we take the time once a year to make sure that all through the year, Liam's time is used appropriately. And it's okay to stop and to draw attention to that. It's okay. Like I bring a picture of Liam to the IEP. This is who we are here for. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, no egos in the room. It's
Right.
just here for him.
You're right. And it took me a long time to get there. It took me a really long time. I think it comes with disability pride and just equality, always feeling that education is a favor. And that's something that I say in the IEP. When you write something like that, it sounds like it's a favor or an option. And I let them know that education is not a favor. Liam's supports are not a favor, something someone's doing, because early in the year I was told, no, he doesn't have support in that class, but he sits with some kids and they help him. No, because in the IEP, there has to be someone who is credentialed supporting. And then that was brought to me. Well, we can't do that because we can't guarantee the person that's going to be there. I'm like, I know it needs to be written and you need to guarantee. That to me is silly. So one thing I did is I really started to listen to what people are saying to me.
Their words.
Yeah. And you can, and it really can be a conversation. And that has really been my goal, is to have a conversation. And one of the places was a word that was used, access to an adult in after school activities. That's not how it was written in the IEP. It was adult. It was like access to like a BII. And again, I was able to bring it back to one day in this school year when Liam peeked out and saw Stephen's car and walked to the car without anybody knowing. And he got in the car right at the bell. And Stephen watched all the people panic.
They didn't know where he was. We were in the car, and I had to get out of the car and go, I got him. And they're like, oh, good. Okay. I thought he was over there. Yeah.
So I use that. It doesn't have to come to that, but that can be an example of, and how I would phrase it is that we're fortunate that nothing happened, but we can't unring that bell. And then if that doesn't provoke change, then remind them of the liability that remains. And once you've had the conversation, it's 100% liability. Make sure you're recording your IEP.
Right.
But then if you have something happen at your school, which I see a lot, and we experienced that where like Liam in elementary school walked out, but he also walked down the sidewalk, and a parent saw him and was like, "Whoa, what's Liam?" I think he was like 7. He was like walking down the sidewalk by himself, and she brought him back to class. But then she called us. No, the school never called us. And so that
needs to be documented through email or something.
In writing, timestamp. Yes. We forgot about the timestamp. But so the power of your words when you're in an IEP, it's really they make a difference, and make sure that you are comfortable and you have the power to stop and have a conversation, and you have an equal say in that IEP. That's what's said at the very beginning of the meeting. This is an equal part. You also have experience with your student. You have life experience, and in school. So you know how it should be written, and you know what needs to be there, and don't allow them to alter things or say, well, we're not going to write it like this because for the document it needs to be this way. No, it needs to be, because it needs to be written exactly how it will be implemented. That was an accommodation. Your student gets extra time to complete assignments and assessments and projects. And it's just extra time. There can't be a closed window on what that extra time is, because if that assignment wasn't front loaded, that's an accommodation, then that adds extra time on the back that it needs to be completed, right? So they were trying to put a time limit. And I was like, it's the accommodation is extra time, period. Extra time, whatever that means. Extra time is given on assignments, assessments, projects, period. And so they tried to put a time limit, and I said, okay, you can put your time limit, but it has to read when accommodations are in place and the IEP is upheld. That is the only way I will sign off on that sentence, because if the accommodations are not in place and the IEP is not being upheld, then the burden lies on our student to catch up. And that is not the goal, is not for Liam to play catch up from adults not supporting him. The idea is to create a path to his education that is filled with his accommodations so he can access his curriculum and receive a meaningful education. It's not about checking off boxes. It's not about what kind of grade you're going to give, because you can fail our son and put an A and he hasn't learned anything. We don't, the grades, like, I don't even know if we look at report cards because our priority isn't necessarily the report card. It's not
him learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's him learning, right? You know, a lot of times a substitute for education is we love having him in the class. Basically that feeling of just him being present in the class.
Yeah, it's more, to me, it's more about and how mindful he is about other kids' feelings or, emotional things that he brings to the classroom, not about actual academics. And we know that Liam is an asset in the classroom, and we know that he's an asset academically too. It's not just that he will, put his arm around his buddy when his buddy doesn't get the problem right or something like that. That's kind of the vibe sometimes you get from a teacher of like, oh, we love it. He's just angelic.
I think it's the words that get spoken over, our students, our community, that have been propagated for a very long time. And so they get picked up, and somewhere along the lines, people thought that was enough. And I think that maybe in the 1940s or the 1950s or the 60s, like having a student in the classroom when it wasn't, necessarily the law, that might have been enough, because that was the first step. Like, oh, we have somebody in the class. And that,
but that societal vernacular needs to change and be updated, and then at the very least, it cannot seep into your IEP meeting, it cannot seep into your educational system. We need to be very specific about words rather than generalizing about someone's emotions.
That they're a token.
Right.
Would this be appropriate if they said that about our daughter? She can't really write a paragraph, but man, she's got such a great energy. They think about that.
She smiles.
She smiles. Everybody loves her. Everybody loves her. She's so kind. And that's enough. Like that. So think about that, because when we're talking about equal, that definitely is not equal, is it? Equal. That's a very, very powerful word. Equal. What does that look like? Equal. And I think that's really important. And one thing I learned about when I speak about my son, the words that I use, and I have lots of feelings about Liam, but they're not going to be at the forefront when I'm discussing his education. Like, yeah, I know he makes this world a better place. I know he's one of the most empathetic people. He's a hard worker. He's just really outstanding. Like, he really does. The truth is, he really does make a room better. It just does. But I'm not going to go into the education setting with those words, because that's not what it's about. And if you put that gauntlet in, they will pick that up and run, and that's not change. We're looking to change things. We're looking to change the narrative and the opportunities and the misperceptions and the experience for our student. We're looking to change the opportunities that are ahead. And we've seen that's the one gift of social media, is it's not just someone's opinion of what their son can do. We see the stories. We know what can be accomplished. I just read about in 1915, Princess Alexandria of Prussia was born with Down syndrome, and she was included and educated, and I wouldn't have known that story. And that was 1915, but this family decided that they were going to give their daughter an equal education and not hide her from the public. And it was really beautiful. It was really beautiful. And if they could do that over 100 years ago, right? But now we know, because that wasn't what was at the forefront, right? We have our own stories. We have our own words. And when we are creating a life and parameters and a legal binding document when it has to come to the IEP for our student, for our family member, for our loved one, for our friend, we choose the words. We're at a time now that we get to define the narrative. We have that. We have that power. We've always had the power, but I think we're starting to use that power of our words and our word choices. And when you don't feel like your words are being heard or understood, there's also the power of silence. You don't have to make someone understand. We don't have to make anybody change their mind about Liam. It's not our responsibility to change people's minds. That person has to change their mind. That person has to change their misperceptions about Liam. That is not our job. Our job is to create an environment around him, a foundation beneath his feet of disability pride, where he knows his ability. And he understands that when you go to school, school can be hard. We empower him with his accommodations written inside each notebook. So anybody who sits next to him knows, and he knows to ask for them, because that's what we've really been doing this year is ask for this, ask for that. That's our job. We can't change other people. That comes from within them. So sometimes I just have to be silent. If I've spoken everything I have to say and someone still insists on believing a certain way, and hope that in time they get on board with the evolution of humanity. And when it pertains to an IEP, and I experience that, I have the power to say, let's come back, let's reconvene when you have the answer of how it's going to get done. And that's respecting everybody's time. And that's collaboration. It doesn't lie on Liam's shoulders. That's the beauty. People fought really hard. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people fought really, really hard for 504, for IDEA. And that needs to be honored. That just can't be brushed away because people don't feel like equality matters, because people feel like maybe just being in the classroom is enough. It's not enough. And the law says it's not enough. So, lightning bugs and lightning. And you know what? Sometimes we're going to be a lightning bug. Sometimes we're going to be a lightning bug, and that's okay. But most of the time in an IEP, I do strive for lightning.
Good luck. Reach out with any questions, ideas, comments. We appreciate you.
Yeah, and education is not a favor. It's your students' right, and you're doing a great job.
Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.